We have some big news concerning Azur Promilia, Hoyo's new upcoming Astaweave Haven game, which is no longer being titled Astaweave Haven, and Neverness to Everness. Now, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the little bell notification, that way you remain up to date with every single thing that I post, and I post daily. Do not miss out. Let's first discuss Azur Promilia. Mind you, the developers of Azur Lane are notorious for making some of the most degenerate, cultured character designs in all of gacha gaming. The only games that realistically come close to this are Round Us 2, maybe Snowbreak, although with the censorship going on, maybe not so much anymore. Realistically, Azur Promilia is expected to be very similar, but as of the last several days, on October 31st, the game was officially rated for PS5, for PC, and for mobile. And surprisingly, the rating that they got is not as high as I had anticipated. People have been posting this, people have been discussing the sheer and utter shock that they felt after seeing this. According to Gamatsu, who first reported on this, Azur Promilia, as of the 31st of October 2024, has been rated PG-12. PG-12! The rating is for 12 and above. That is absurd. Like, I watched the trailer. I watched all 3 trailers that were released. We saw dozens of different characters. We saw various different characters at the convention that was held. These are not character models that are PG-12 friendly. And if Azur Lane has taught us anything, it is that things are only going to get much worse, much lewder, much more cultured, much more degenerate. And I am perfectly fine with that. A lot of the hot, very voluptuously shaped big mommy characters are gonna look flawless. But it is so surprising to see it rated PG-12 when so many other games have been rated PG-15, like 17 and above, but not this game. So that means one of 2 different things. Azur Promilia is actually going to be much more tame than Azur Lane, to the disappointment of all Manju fans, or they have found a way to game the system, a way to have culture degenerate characters in a gacha game but still get around the censorship, the censors, and get registered as a PG-12 game. Regardless of how they managed to do this, how they achieved this, kudos to them, because this is phenomenal. As long as, of course, it remains the degen game that we expect it to be, and I have no reason to expect it won't be, to suspect that that isn't the case, because Azur Lane has managed to fly under the radar all this time. Sure, there have been skins that have been censored within China, but for the most part, global hasn't been affected. So I have no reason to believe global would be affected for this either. Unfortunately, still don't have any definitive release date for this yet, but I'm sure that's coming. Before we go any further, let me take a moment here to thank my incredible patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this every single day. You guys are phenomenal, and I can't thank you all enough for the support. Now let's keep talking. Neverness to Everness confirmed that they are holding closed beta recruitment right now for Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. This is technically a Chinese test phase, which means that players outside of China can realistically apply for it. They might not necessarily get accepted, but it's definitely possible. It is plausible within the realm of possibility to get in and to try the game out regardless of where you're located around the world. I know a lot of content creators that I know personally have registered for this. I know that there are plenty of people that are going to attempt to get it either way, because this is arguably one of the better looking upcoming gacha games out there. I did have my reservations about certain things like the character models and the animation specifically. This upcoming test phase is going to, I think, prove to not only me, but a lot of people how good the game is going to ultimately end up. We saw a lot of footage released since the game's conception, since its announcement several months ago, and for all intents and purposes, it does look very good. However, the only way we can build genuine excitement for a game is if we see firsthand what gameplay is going to be like, what the characters look like, what the animations feel like, how the combat feels. We don't just need one trailer and then radio silence for a year, 2 years, like Mugen. Mugen's hype, Mugen's anticipation has dwindled. What replaced it was Neverness to Everness, and while Neverness might be essentially an upgraded copy of Mugen that was announced after the fact. It might be released before Mugen. It is still going to be a playable game and have a playable test long before Mugen does. I do not know if there are going to necessarily be restrictions for this test phase. I genuinely hope there isn't. I hope a lot of global players can get in, because at the end of the day, if Neverness are planning to release this game and appeal to the global market, they're going to need global players to tell them now in the early stages of the game what they need to do, what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. Sure, Chinese players could tell them what they want, and the game might do great in China and tank globally. We don't want that. We want the game to be fun for us as well. And the only way for that to happen is to let Chinese players and global players in. That way, you get an accurate representation of what the world wants rather than just what China wants. Holding test phases near to one another is perfectly fine. I hope that Neverness isn't going to release a Chinese test phase and go months before releasing a global test, and then making alterations to the game based off of what Chinese players want rather than what we want. I really do hope we're not treated as like second-class citizens for this. I know that could happen with any of these games. They are Chinese games, and catering to the Chinese demographic is the most important thing for them. And finally, Hoyo announced, or it was revealed several months ago, that Hoyo was working on a brand new game called Astaweave Haven. This is something that I've covered in the past. It was what was shown to be an Animal Crossing, kind of taking a little bit of inspiration from like Stardew Valley gacha, where you're essentially paying for like curtains, rugs, tables, and chairs, appliances for your kitchen. The game genuinely looked okay. It's not really a game that will appeal to me. I think it's a game that will appeal to an entire audience that Hoyo doesn't currently have access to, which is the Animal Crossing demographic. Hoyo have opened up dozens of new accounts all across social media for what is being called Petit Planet. You might be thinking maybe that's just another game or another studio, but Astaweave Haven has disappeared. All mention of Astaweave Haven from social media has disappeared. You can search it up and nothing's there. Petit Planet has replaced Astaweave Haven in its entirety. Petit Planet is the new name for Astaweave Haven. Hoyo is releasing an Animal Crossing gacha game called Petit Planet. I don't know how I feel about that name. I think Astaweave Haven actually sounded better. Zenless Zone Zero, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, they're all catchy names. You know, Wuthering Waves, Tower of Fantasy, Azur Promilia, they're all really cool names. Astaweave Haven, it sounds cool. So this is actually surprising. I did not expect them to, because they filed to attain the license for Astaweave Haven, but even after attaining the license, they're altering it this late in the stage of development to Petit Planet. Is that because they're preparing to launch the game? It's going to launch sooner than we'd anticipated at some point in 2025? Because if that's the case, then that's phenomenal. It is worth noting, as a Redditor pointed out in the thread in question, that Petit Planet and Astaweave Haven also shared the same name, the same label. This is further proof that they are in fact the very same game. All of this is great news. Azur Promilia, Neverness to Everness, Petit Planet, all games that are theoretically going to be playable in some capacity in 2025, and I am very excited for all of it. Now we just need some news on Arknight's Enfield. Hey you, where do you think you're going? Don't you close out of this tab. I didn't give you permission to do that. Sit your ass back down. Click one of the two videos that are going to be on screen in just a moment and keep watching my content. Keep enjoying my content.